My father wrote me a letter that I read at the dedication of the Alumni Center up there. And it was such a moving thing that people asked me to put it in the library. He was a two-year ag. They grew up and he was extremely poor, and I don't think he even had the funds to come back between the 2 years that he was up there. He said something to the effect like, the university has been more kind to you than even to me, and you, in much more eloquence, he would then, he said, you ought to think about ways you can give back to the university. There was a sense that I knew that economically it would have been a lot easier to go to Penn State. My first tuition was $125 a semester, and I just came across an old 1945 catalog just the other day when it was free. And if you were from out of state, they asked for the magnificent sum of $75 to go there, I think for the year. So I went into the College of Business and graduated from there then in 3 years after that. I got to be the football manager, and that allowed me to meet people who have been important in my life ever since. Steve Garvin was the captain. He became the head of finance at Penn State and led me back when we came back east to involve with Penn State. And Joe Paterno was the assistant coach. At that time, in a more primitive era of Penn State football, the student manager as a sophomore was encouraged to, not encouraged, was directed to check in the freshman football players into the library to make sure that they were there. So I checked in the football players and then checked out the attractive young women who were earnestly studying in the library. And so I saw this attractive woman, and she was a very cheap date because I took her to every free event at Rec Hall that existed, from wrestling matches to basketball games, and I thought she was a dedicated sports fan, and I didn't realize how much she was, how painful this was.
To you.
You were dedicated to me, how painful this might have been.
Actually, about the time Ed and I met, I was very aware that his parents had an annual event in Reading with which they were very involved and very dedicated to it. And it was a Christmas or a holiday dinner dance on which they spent a lot of time, had a small group of people, and my sense was over time the group had grown. And for us, early on, it was a very nice and a good example of service to the university.
And so, but his love of Penn State was always very great, and he got together with these people at their weekly luncheons, and I knew that.
The genesis of the idea that we might make some kind of a contribution in some way to Berks campus came from Mike Beaver.
Then Mike Beaver actually said that because of my parents' involvement in Penn State, that I really ought to do something here to recognize them and honor them. And so at the time, this was a facility that they were attempting to create, and so that's why the gift was given. And I think it was around 1989.
And I still can see Mike sidling up to Ed and saying, you know, Ed, someday you might want to do, or you and Helen might want to do something for the Berks campus. Your parents have been so involved in this area, you just might want to give it a thought. And that really was then, from there, the idea of the fields and Ed's interest in athletics. It's obviously the fields were important. Unknown to me was the idea that we each would be invited to step up to home plate and swing a bat and presumably hit a ball. Ed is blue and white. Doesn't matter whether you see it on the outside or the inside, but I realized that early on.
This has afforded us a great opportunity. There's no doubt that in terms of time and treasure and effort, we've invested a lot in Penn State, but we get a lot back. And we have some extraordinarily good friends that we've developed through the years. We've had a great experience at Penn State, and we'll continue to contribute as we're asked.